Good morning. No.
That's so. Sanje Chedang Choje
Chanam Janju
Danjo Sanje Chedang Choje
Chanam Janju Jangi Chaning Sokam Tolam Banju Sanju Parsho
Sanje Chedang
Shodang Sogi Tonam Janju Padu Dani Gafuti Dagi Dolam Banju Sanju
Satayan Tan Gate
Gate Para Songate
Bode so Dayan Tan
Gate Para Songate Tayata Gate Para Songate
Oh, that's all. Yeah, that's some Tamjago to Topjalana Majaba Sanji Komaran, but it's Chineja Tobacha. He said the Chantus of Lavana Chu should not the Lawa single, similar to Tujishu Manoa to go to Kasu then gets a Chambushua like it's and Chico and the Kasu Chuju with the Geshe chipping sometimes.
So in setting our motivation, we dedicate to our very, very best to attain a state of enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. We know that in order to achieve that goal, I need to train in all the trainings of the Bodhisattva. To do that, I need to have a good understanding of what those trainings are. And in order to gain that understanding, I need to be able to hear what the trainings are, what the instructions are from a reliable source, from a perfect source. And so it is with this in mind today that I'm here to listen to a teaching is composed by the great Arya Bodhisattva Shantideva, who composed the Bodhisattva's way of life.
What I'm doing, I said, Kasura was doing the setup and the Kasota doing the Nankala and the Tapjala Tuja Chimboda Damba, more and getting Jazara Lama Yibola Naba and Tapjala Tuja Chimbodaba and Dumba to be on set up and Dumba to be on board and Kula Chugu Mumeko to Shaji Chani and Check Kula Chugu Mumeta. And Casa Namshag tenant and the Casota Casota Takancha Yamcha. Because of the yes, and Yamshag the second Zenam ticket. Kula Chugu Mumeko set up. Also, what are you? Some of what the combat.
And as usual, then also we begin by setting up our visualization in the space in front, which is the visualization of the figure of Shakyamuni Buddha, who in essence is our own root guru, both of whom are skilled in means and compassionate. And that the Buddha is seated in the Vajra posture with the and dressed in the saffron robes of a monk. He holds one hand in the earth, the right hand in the earth-touching mudra, and in the left hand he holds an alms bowl filled with nectar. And that he is also in the nature of pure, clear light, and that also we feel that the Buddha is actually there. His presence is actually there in front of us.
What is it? And the rank at Tagotre and the city of Pamata and Pinja, Drobo Droma Lasobe, and Chicken, Zebe, and Chicaso, that Type, Sinja Taja George, you send that Masama never you, some sort of shit.
And likewise, all around us, we visualize all kind mother sentient beings, including our parents, our relatives, our friends, those who are close to us, those who we have difficulty with, and those neutral, and that we include all of the whole number of sentient beings without exception.
What's all your what the combat? And the rank doing the set of the Matuba on Bodila, and because of the Joe Omkaba Jaba Arm or Tuga Home will be Eagle Sunji set up, and Tuga Hula, and we said part of Mava Tune, and Shin Ramjan never Yeshiva, and only the Jaba Jantana, Yeshiva, Takanjaji, the Damsiba, Tobat Shaja to be, and because of the Komshaba Tila Martin, the Kusonto Martin, and it's all your own go chula matches double, make you get it. What did you come
We see that the figure in front that we are visualizing is marked at the crown by a white Om, at the throat by a red A, and at the heart by a blue hung syllable. And from this blue hung syllable at the heart, light rays emanate, going out into the pure realms, inviting of the wisdom beings and the empowering deities. The wisdom beings dissolve into the central figure, into the body, speech, and mind of the central figure, and the empowering deities confer the nectar of empowerment, some of which overflows at the crown, spontaneously producing the figure of Akshobhya.
Bodhisattva. And be Kupeka, color back, Takajachi, and Garantula, Seva Conepa, Takajachi, and the Rotakaja, Kensin Newsum chatting. What did the Combustion, Takajachi Kasura, Kensin Newsum, Uzegi, and Raja Samjan Hanjala, Jingle up the and the Kosota, gave a damn Mabala, and it got the Kasoda, Sonam, Sota, Ishika, Sola, Soma, Tendig, Sony, Kachimba. Sabe, and it didn't and Gentula, Gentuki, knew what they are just some gentle about Jingle Deading. What in the commercial?
And then also we visualize that the figure in front of us is not in any way static, but is kind of like a pulsating this incredible light of the pure qualities of enlightenment, the Buddha's knowledge, the Buddha's power, the Buddha's wisdom. It is that as representative of the collections of wisdom and merit, and that we feel that we are constantly being blessed in the presence of the Buddha at the moment.
What is Rangi Tagodi, Simja Tamjag, Rangi, and the Chikaso de Tembala, Kuson to get a unit Jeshima Tower to each Modato, you were not singing, Rangata Simja Tamja, what I didn't sing and because of the Takanja, Tower to each Modato were getting it. And Simja de that Tamja, Ranga, Russo to when Nashima Kaibala, Namangazo Ministry, Namju again, what the day and Kuson to a unit Tibekan, what I took. So because of the contingent, what the conversion, and the same thing to me naturally be ninja. And doing a set with Thomas Shaja to Kusun to the Yunde, Jeshima and the Deva. What the legend of what I seem to something to touch by Juvechido. And Thomas Shaja to a combined model, Tommy teacher, and what I can judge Junju Shun the Yan and Yamachi, some of what the conversion.
So that we are also not in any way static, but also viewing the figure of the Buddha here with an appreciation of the Buddha's qualities of body, speech, and mind. And from that arises the triple faith, the faith of conviction, the faith of aspiration, the faith, manifest faith, or pure faith, sorry. And that we also cognizant of all the sentient beings all around us, although they're kind of mired and kind of trapped in the sufferings relative to their rebirth, are able to cognize this situation with a human intelligence. And they similarly are looking towards the Buddha with that mind of faith and that aspiration to attain the state of enlightenment. And so from our point of view, we are also aware of the kind of unbearable suffering of all the sentient beings around us. And from that, of course, generally arises the sense of compassion. And we are reminded that indeed all of what we're about here is to attain that state of enlightenment in order to be of perfect benefit to all sentient beings. And once we have that motivation, and then we can say, okay, now I've got ready to listen to this teaching from the Bodhisattva's way of life.
What the listen, and what the listen, what I can judge what the lesson to about coming, and it because of the Yuvayina, and it to make it sing up, and it what the lesson, and it dinner, and it because of the, and it to but, and it dinner, and it because of the Takan Judge, commission, the Takan Judge, or because of the comes on to Kawaki in there, and it to Mele Madavinja, to Mele Tave, Tana Tabaja Madam, Taman, some water. Then it comes to all the Kawaki in there. That Tungel mother was telling you what you in Yanjung Jene, Yanjung Chiko, and then Yanjung Yeba Lotte, Rangi Chivola, and it ranches and Jatamjek Chivola, and Pamatamaja was Josu, some what is Kobashe.
So if we have the time, then we can engage in a more elaborate visualization and interaction with the Buddha, including the recitation of the name mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha. We also can do more in-depth contemplation on the different suffering within the 6 realms of existence, and just reaching that conclusion that really, in order to get beyond the suffering completely, we must get beyond cyclic existence. That all of the rebirths within cyclic existence of the 6 possibilities are inundated with the suffering. And so therefore, we need to completely kind of extricate ourselves from this reality to get beyond the suffering. And from that arises the sense of definite emergence, of renunciation. And from that, indeed, then is manifested the lotus mandala seat on our crown.
Then I said, Rang Lude, Rang Semde, Luga Chacha, etc. Nigmari. That's similar to what child is similar and some kitchen magic pie watch and similar to the need to be your mother. And not Melbaras Mari, no way to be your head. Not give to my Kibumus, no way to take your head. And not to make you to do what you do, and they do swat again, matching. You need your touch. You're down the condition. What are you didn't tend to me something don't want you to compassion and money but a sent to shop. Then they go money but the money but the then they don't want you get a lot and catching a range to that payment and you making what yak much to so some compassion.
So this motivation that we have, I will do whatever I can to attain a state of enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. We now begin the contemplation of that I, that self, that has such an aspiration. Where is this I that I am conceiving of? Is it in the body? Is it in the mind? We look into the body and we separate all the different parts of the body, searching for this objectively existent self and not finding it. We look into the mind, which might seem like a more possible place to find such a self. We separate out the mind into past moments, future moments, and so on, and still we don't find that which equates to this, objectively existent self. And yet we have this experience of, I am happy, I'm sad, I want happiness, I don't want suffering, etc. We kind of have that sense of an experiential I. But when we go and search for it, when we analyze for it to find it in an objective sense, then we don't find it. And this finding, this not finding rather, this emptiness of a self, we kind of keep our mind focused there on that just mere absence of that self. And that from that arises the sun disk mandala seat on our crown.
What are the name by Yinzan? That the name by Yinzan, that to make Yonsati, and it's a way you can Dado Mabala and Mabel Mashimaja, Dado to what's it, tell it in a chat and Lord Naso to get you by Yinzan. You by Yinzan, what I can take the day into that? Only to Dado Mabel never get it. Tell it in a talk and Dado Matu by Yinzan, Stange can day in it, and because of the Because of that, you can then Mangutla turn younger yotu, and it and it's because of the attack. What the Latin attack, oh, that about the Tamki Chamas, you chose it. And it deleted never near to it. And it deleted never near on your top. The later Tamki came a combat, you went to Matona Tameting. Then you went up, some jet Tamki to the San Diego Matona Tameto to a chili, something. Said, dear, you need to do what chicken, sons of water and compression, and then they get near big. Some time to the San Jacoba, you want to do what chicken, something then they get lotty, and directing when I come. Because you're making work at the direction when I too much. You saw something what in the commercial.
So this has a sense of the lack of any inherent or objective existence, has a sense of kind of consequences to it that, that without gaining kind of understanding and realization there, we are bound to completely experience the suffering. The suffering is the actuality of our situation. and that this mistaken understanding or ignorance leads to all of that which we are attached to, all of which that we have aversion from, etc., etc. And all of good and bad, though, when we look at it from the emptiness point of view, everything good and bad arises in the independence. This notion of there have all being independent originations. And so this starts to open up possibility. This opens up possibility of the attainment of liberation, of the attainment of the state of omniscient state of enlightenment. And so that's what I will aim for now. I would aim to actually attain the state of enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings, to relieve them of all suffering. In fact, I must do that. I must attain that state of enlightenment as quickly as possible. And from that sense of bodhicitta, that mind of enlightenment, arises the moon disk mandala seat on our crown.
Lama Tubia Ombote, and Machenda Rangi Chivola, Machenda Padesa, Lama, Tagi Chivo, Kusutu, Mujato, Smasu de Chavanda, Chivol Mahacha, Chantando, Tambukas, Nibekos, Smoke Attention, Sanjay Kumamato, what is so Kawako.
So now we have a suitable seat, so we begin the invocation verse to invite the Buddha in the space in front to our crown. O glorious and precious root Guru, come take the lotus and moon seat placed here on my crown. Keep me safe in your kindness, bestow on me the attainments of body, speech, and mind. Again, with the first recitation, the figure moves. With the second, they arrive at our crown, and with the third, they remain seated there. And we have this certainty that they will remain until we attain the state of enlightenment. And we can rejoice at that news.
What is it? What can you Sanjay Kumamato, Pato, and Rangi, and Chivo, Lama Tubia Ombote Pata, Shune, and Ches Sonso, and Kawakon, what up, Miss Yabo Jonso, Tanima did in and Takache, Casoda, Semja Tamjek, don't do 2 egg. And it's a Casoda, Kawa the Chaba Jonso, Kawa the Taba Jonso. Something what in the Compassion, and Yala to my Menjeta, Tosa Chancha, Yala to my Menjeta, Chapapi, what in the chat.
You know, this is a significant moment for us, that we have the care of the Buddha, the one who's going to look out for us until we attain the state of enlightenment right here on our crown. And this is really a red letter day. This is so important for us, you know. This is and also I've rededicated myself to do whatever I can to attain enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. And this is something really worth rejoicing and something really virtuous that is are happening here. And so we make the necessary offerings to the Buddha, who having come, the 7 limb practice, the mandala offerings, the different practices of accumulation of merit, as well as the purification of negativity.
What are the legend? Komshibangane, what are the Geshe,
and so with that kind of sentiment and with that visualization, that meditation, we begin. We're ready now to listen to the Bodhisattva's way of life.
Kasana Danda di Junjuku Shune, and it's a Geshe Danichamu, Chobala Lapsuti, Chobala Lapsu, and it take that Kasoda, my Geshe Geshe Deta, Debe Sange, Sange the Chanjo Sampaso, Danda Sange, Sange the Mahumba Sange, the Sange Barque, and Kasoda Sanjeta, Chanjo Sampasuki, that Joba dinner should love to inside, and I dinner should love to a chicken in some channel. What in the conversation, but what in the conversation?
And just to remind ourselves, of course, this is one of the seminal instructional texts on exactly the practices to engage in order to fulfill the Bodhisattva ideal. It is the practices like these that have been perfected by Buddhas in the past, Buddhas that are becoming now, and Buddhas that will arrive in the future. And that this is something, very, very precious text that's composed by the great master Shantideva himself, and that I dedicate myself to actually emulate those Buddhas from the past, to actually perfect all of the instructions as given here.
What is it? Kazan Zamden Shubana, Takaja Kazan Dada Tig, Lula Chana Tigmari, Santa Luti, Takato de Water, Chana Devaina, Takaja Kasura, Takaja Casa de Chana Devaina, and the Kasura, Takaja Tikasura, and the Kasura, Takaja Lu, Tama Mayor to do any chicken, Kasura, Takaja. Kid Jaguar Sova T say to the Takuja Shang the Pentomodos, Teshamanbush Joshua, Takalet you would have Slava in a Tata and Nabate, Naba knew to Chibas, that Luton knew to Chiba, Kiawala Kurpa, that she is Kiawala Kurpa, she did what did it? Kurpa, she started that Luke tended to Tobati and the Casodata, Casodata, Kanja, Pejukan Stango. This is what Ngaba knew to that look at it, control Sado, but Chick to it. That you do there, got the Chick Casodata, Shuanya, Namchin Yeme, she was a chimney the Kaya Mivas water, this one and she chin attack, that knew to Namjima to Chick to it, Chick to the new to Chibas, Takarichibus, Yeva Kalata, Ludi, and Pejutan to Bachibus, Pejutan Casa, Gawala to Bachibus, Gawala Kobaripala, she's Cocodas Casana. New to Chive, Chigwe, Ludi, Kiawala Kuripa. And because a Jawa Chung say, Jam, Mijava, Shembe, Kamba, Miripa. And it Langachin as a didn't do to Shuba. Or do you lost at this? Simja Tada got turned to Baripa was what the subject as a she's was going to what the
And so we've been looking at that part in the text on the this is the chapter on mindfulness, and in terms of reducing or eradicating attachment to the body, clinging to the physical form, and that we have heard of what will happen anyway to the body at death when they will be given to the dogs and the vultures and so on, and that this attachment to it is counterproductive to your aims. It's a pointless kind of way of living your life. It's kind of like all of what is kind of like saying is negativity with regard to the body. Now, this argument continues, of course, for plenty more verses here, and so the question will arise, of course, as we go through all the disadvantages of clinging to the body, is then how do we put this body to use? In a sense, we know it's going to be destroyed at the end. We know that death is definite, time of death is indefinite, and only our virtue will be of any benefit to us at that time. And so when say, while you still have the body then, how is it that we should make use of this this body? And the advice here is that we should exhort our body to engage in virtue. And so these are the next set of outlines here. We're looking at the fifth outline of the previous book that we had been looking at. And it states that since the body will quickly disintegrate, we need then to exhort ourselves towards virtue. And this has 4 subheadings. The first is, since death will quickly destroy the body, that therefore it is right that we should inspire the body towards virtue. And secondly, then say, if we are in a true clinging, we do absolutely nothing at all, and then that's sustaining the life in that context is improper. Sustaining the body in that context is improper. And then an example to clarify that. The third of these subheadings is that since we have, give the body its wages, now it is right for us to put it into service, to put it to use. And fourthly, through conceiving of the body as a boat, then we can establish we can fulfill the purpose of all sentient beings, and the reasoning for that.
뉴도 치외 지배에서 류대에서 류대 개월로 거리 반에서 다 뉴도 치외 다 뉴도 치와 뉴도 치우네 다 가자 치스도 다 류당 아니 가서 셈니다 카드도 아니 치스리요 봐 치스고 다 진짜 류디 배주면 차는 것도 다 배주 예배 값서는 배주 땅도 받지 그랬어 거라 류생 카마데 대배 값들 아니 류디 배주 예배 값책으로 다 배주 땅 그랬어라 대체서 어떤데 이거서 뉴도 치외 집에 류디 개와 거리 반에 미워적의 류디네 거와 저와 니도 세야서 대다 켜기 순간에 지다자와 매바 예서 초대 자다 켜지나 대자 교기 지자리였어.
And so the first of these subheadings is that since the death will quickly overcome or destroy the body, we should now turn it towards virtue. And this is dealt with in the second half of verse number 66 and then all of verse number 67. So reading, truly this body of a human being should only be employed in the practice of virtue. But should you instead guard it with attachment, then what will you be able to do when it is stolen by the unsympathetic Lord of Death and given to the dogs and birds? And so here, death is defined as the separation of mind and body. And so therefore, it is at this time, while we still have this body in this life, that we should really focus it on virtue.
가서다 라파 집어서 수고도다 타마 어디에 세트레스 레다 딱보 매네 샤브나 되는 살도 근데 딱보 잡아이네 뭐다 타마들 집에나 디바우도다냐 코벤나루 사월루 샤르다 타마 디소를 차도 그러다 좋다 그 키세나다 아니 웜 그래서 부그사나다 가서 세바이네 그 타마 좀 매바 차도 저러다 간자 타마 디소를 저기 순ገብ제는 초모도가 디체도 순ገብ제도 그렇잖아 초모도가 수고라 순겨 안치다저와 매바이 켜기 라네 터대다 간자저 코벤나 루샤그와 소설 라관의 터는 코벤나 루샤데 지금 차기와 코벤서 롤루사드나라 루사바 지금 차기와 와다 키다 디바지바 이네다 간자지 저 코벤나 루바 임바 이네다 저는 되게 아주 소소게 지에메 바스고요 와다 된데 다 된데서 된조 상회 랑가라주고 류데 야와게다 조바주 상 토베서 미오주 가라주고 류데네 다들 가르쳐서 다 개월을 꾸토바티 아니 다 개월을 꾸토 얘기 로아다베라 로아카다 개월을 꾸토 얘기 다 간제 가서래 꾸토바이나 다 류게 아니 고바도 두고도 앞에나 류권의 초사 직장지에 아니 나 권에 다 간제 초사 직장지에 이 권의 초사 직장지에 근데 요바 인사 다 진짜 초사 직장지에 와라 지금 디가 가져래 다 류가니티 다 간자 류라 텐테야 아니 세디게 이데 류라 텐테야 안디자 류디 개월로 거바이나 아니 류고 고전도 좀 되기도 와 류고 고전도 좀 되기도 와 안데데가 개월로 거바니도 제도바이나 개월로 거도바이나 아니 나라도 류데다 여바도 고쳐봐서 차그랬어 대다 되도 미주바 대다게 된데게 되는데 맞줘봤잖아 아니 저랑 가제서 순ገብ제네 들 류게 쳐도 소소 조소 먹고 따네 가제 순가 제와이나 타마데 아니 치다 쳐도 그랬다 치다 쳐도네 아니 다 가서라다 지게 매바 차도라 그래 전제 가제네 평금도 배나 매 야고연의 평금도 앞지 야고연의 평금도 타마데라 수강가 마도베 뒤차기도 다 간자 소소게 레긴 규링보 가제대 레주여바이나 아니 바자라라 바제도 중화이네 냉게 잡두고도 암지게 잡두고도 로바주게 편도 제두고도 다 되게 차상제 매 야고연의 평금도 암지 야고연의 타마데라 아니 그거 매바 좀 다르고 소소 가제 대게 레그 네바데 매바이네 암지 야고연의 편도고면도 내가 야고연의 편도고면도 맹아 야고연의 평금도 계급다 시바 로바 야고연의 편도고면도 타마데 소소 레그 네바데 조선은 간지에면도 아니 암지가 소리 세쟁부터 왔다 다가봐 되게 레터가 왔다 어디에 레터가 아다 니가 다 개체요 말마 가르치여 열스 개체 뭐 같은 거다 진짜 유스
And so, yes, whether we, have this kind of scenario here when the body is laid out, is, given to the dogs, the vultures, and so on, or indeed whether, we go through the process here of like burying the body or putting the body in a coffin and that coffin then being buried in the ground thereafter, the result is the same, isn't it? That the body simply is going to be food for other creatures, whether dogs, vultures, or insects and worms. That this is kind of the inevitable thing. So it's kind of like saying, while you still have a body here, you have this capacity of the kind of the three doors of your existence through being able to accumulate merit, purify negativity related to the body, accumulate merit, purify negativity with the speech, and purify negativity and accumulate merit with the mind. And so the body is like a basis on which we can do this. And so therefore we should, in order to kind of make having a body meaningful, we should really engage in this kind of activity. And that this makes our having a body meaningful. And so it's kind of like really saying, if you don't engage in that, saying here, you have this kind of full complement of leisures and endowments of a qualified human body. And that you should only then put it, kind of exhort it towards virtue, use this this advantage that you have towards virtue. But if you don't, do that, if you don't engage in that, if you kind of like just protect the body for no particular reason, kind of coddle the body, pay all this expense towards the body, and then it's kind of like you're just careering towards a final desperate end where death, merciless death, will kind of like as it were rob this body from you and give it to the dogs and the vultures. And so there's nothing you can do about it at that stage. And so it's very important that we recognize that this is coming, and that when we are sick or ill, at this point, when we still have the karma to kind of sustain life, we may rely on the doctors, the nurses, the medicines, and so on, and that we can recover, we can get some benefit. These little obstacles that we meet in life can be overcome to a certain extent during the kind of the time period of our lives. But at the end, when our karma is finished, then regardless of how expert the doctor is, and the kindness of the nurses and our friends and support and so on, that there is nothing that can be done. We are going to die. That's our time. And that all the doctors can do is apologize at that stage for not being able to help us. And so we have to, make sure that, we are ready at that point, that we have used our body towards a virtue during the course of our lives.
고박문에도 가르쳐두고도 셔바체 디셔바 토네 다 가르는 것은 아니 류데 유는 뭐 미네바 직도와 대심바체 디니 심에 토네 다 가르쳐고도 사네 아니 뒤주 촐라 마당 바체네 아니 고바 줍주에 들어도 와 돈다 잡대 나라도 지금 최제고 삼자는 아다 제일 제적으로 제일 저거 단지용 거 단다다 개직만 단다다 개직만 들레들레 치그레서는 치그레스 아니 남지 레베서 남지 레베레스 어들레체 다 이나야 그 단지용 거다 들인다 개직만 산이다 개직만 아 로딜라다 개직만 야 샘딩드네 단지용 게 마치베지 되네 용거 말이야 삼자 레와소로 지게 아니 뒤주 쳐다도 될 수도 봐 대단사 고뒤이네 용촉을 했어 고뒤이네 용촉을 했어 삼상이 아니 치와 미다 봤을 근데 쉬우지 개쳐버려도 와 다 치와 미다 봐 중세도 아니 랑게 류디 배주 매바 찾아야 되래도 가서 류다 셈니 카테도 아니 류들 배주 매버차 차로다 배주 매버 맞아 아니 류들 아니 그 가서 지마카다 촐라도 가냐 용되기도 다 랑게 셰바고 카마데 데베라나 아니 류스바전 대토도 아니 딜라데데 다 간자 거기 가서도 거바 먹고지 툭툭해 준 것도 봐 다들 류그 거바 문에 주베다 데데 요르다스 데데 요르 아니 데데 요바디 아니 뒤서 림보지 가서 유르고 되고 어때 되고 말다스 남시다 카테 주고 다스 근데 내 거바 툭툭 지고 다스 거바 툭툭 지고 다스 왔다 간제 디게 되네 아니 가서도 거기 가서도 랑게 단생 거 로슈 충다 다에 아 룰라 아니 창네 아니 저 가서도 아니 저 배전지에 이렇게 들 계획되게 파세 주에 아니 뒤주 딱딱딱딱 류 배주 딱딱딱 류다 셈되게 배주 딱딱딱 투 제도에 왔다 되게 내가 제도 송되기도 와.
Well, it's important then from these verses and these explanations that we understand how important the body is, there is a certain purpose to this particular type of body, to know what this purpose is, and that is to use it towards virtue, and that we must also be very, very aware that this is not a long-term kind of guarantee, that we will not remain long with this body. It will die. And so the real key message is here, once you know all that, don't waste time. This is not the time for procrastination, for putting it off to engage in virtue, to engage in spiritual practice, because this indicates that you are grasping at permanence. And that, even though you go, oh yeah, I've heard the teachings on death is definite, the time of death is indefinite, and so on, but I'm not going to die today. I'm not going to die anytime soon. This is really dangerous thinking. It's grasping at permanence. And so you must get over this, to understand, in fact, the fact of the matter is, because death is indefinite, the time of death is indefinite, then we can die at any time. And so that means that there's going to be a separation between your body and your mind. And that means that you will not have the use of your body then. It's pointless. There's no way that you will be able to make use of it. What happens, in fact, when your consciousness leaves the body immediately starts to smell and to deteriorate, to degenerate. And so at that point, then it's kind of no good to you. So you really have to get this clear and make kind of clear demarcation that now I have this body. I am reasonably compassed. I won't have this situation long. And therefore, I exhort myself, my own body, to engage in virtue now, to reduce this grasping at permanence, to get rid of the obstacles that are impeding my virtue, and then to kind of make sure that I am doing everything I can to not waste time and to kind of compel myself to engage in virtue with this body now. This is the key issue, the key point here.
Well, 그나 나라도 지금 류도 여바절때는 아니 저기 셴발라 펜바 두가라 도에게 아니 공바장도 도두고도 아니 생각강에 여바도 라베 아니 강에 망보 세게 제두고도 아니 저기 남주고 터는 구샵 제두고도 펜바 두고도 지금 망보지 제두고도 와 다데 그 제두에 뒤 아니 저기 뭐저 저기 내 펜바 둠때 셈제살은 너밖에나 너라 봐 아니 셈제 슈바다 동화다 세발라 소바차바다 너바라 다 디시도 펜바 둠도에게 다 되게 둠도나 아니 루고 거대 망보지 주베도 와 차세 고라 잡들에 망보죠라 대자마자 뭐서 고라 셈제 망보라 펜토도에게 루고 때는 루게 아니 자세가 돈을 펜토야 망보 쉬우정도도 와 아니 되게도 둠도바 있나 아니 루고 거바도 주바라 와 루고 거바 주바라 와 왔다 들려잖아 그 루고 돈을 거바 주바래 아니 나가 돈을 아니 샬라 펜바 주야 나서 봐줘 되게도 둠도바나 아니 나가 거바도 주고 그러와 좋아 아니 삼로 돈에 아니 굴롱 상보게 아니 잠이 장주가 샘 고바잖아. 아니 샘고 고바데 주문 거와. 다디 마바자 디 독초 낙선다 녀선 켄네 제바이나 야 샘고 고바 친질로도 주어도 야 라제 니가를 녀용도 와. 류고토네 녀용도 나고토네 녀용도 녀에 되게데 파샤 폐 되게데 아니 배 줍네. 타치마저 줍투에다 배주치고 그래서 디야 산인단이 주변에서 마음에 좀 단단한 고수고 그래서 뭐야 다도 다 되려도 와.
So for us then, that to recognize what it is that we need to do, and indeed one such exercise would be to list all of the different ways in which the body can be used to benefit, and that we can see clearly that there are so many beneficial uses that we can put the body to, whether it's just generally helping others or meditating or we can remove the suffering of others, we can comfort others, we can do remove the problems of others physically, we can showing respect to others, that we can do circumambulation, we can do prostrations and so on, and that the list goes on, and in this way you really establish just how crucial, how meaningful the physical body can be. And then, of course, whilst you're doing that, will come up all the ways in which the body can harm too, and that you can kind of really kind of see how devastating the act of hitting or striking or getting into a physical row with somebody is, and to kind of really edit those kind of behaviors out of your life, because you have exposed them as being completely counterproductive uses of the body. And that also like to understand that this body then is something which is extremely precious, extremely beneficial, because it can be used in all kinds of beneficial ways to help others. That when we motivate to go and do some virtue to help others, that is the job of the mind, and then we put it into action then through speech and through the body. And that here the body has to deal with the negativities of covetousness, harmful intent, and so on. We know that if these are in the mind, they will lead to subsequent negativities of body and speech. And so we have to look after the mind and where that motivation is at all times as well. And so it's kind of like and to make kind of this commitment to say, oh, not tomorrow or the day after tomorrow, but actually today I will begin this process today, to now, and to get this notion that there isn't time to procrastinate is very, very important.
So what 가서 랑게 야라고 토네 펜바트베 타이야바스도 펜바트베 타이 배나 부지 싫어 지금 부지 거라들 년가들 파잡네 지에도 봐. 다들 되게 그가 지금 샘상비 토네 제바이나다 펜바빠도 매바 주트에게 오다 르기 거바 망고 수도 봐. 다 되게 뇌게라 치바이나네 애네들 르디게 펜모도 받자와 라지니까는 뇌 차도다. 다 그때 이바 인자 다 간제 근데 이바 인자 아니 지가소래 근데 인바자 링보 마도 바티 껴도 용거래 류디다 카테도 그래서 하마제 권에 배주 땅도 같이 그랬어. 어디 디스고도 어디서 다 니바 가서 니바 아사 가서 자와 중세장 미제 버라서 신배 장반에 미리돼서 다 계획 자와 두배 그 국가 위와데 아니 국가 중세실 매바 있네 뒤 두배 배주 맞아 맞잖아. 전에 다 가서는 아니 류장 대바이나 다들 거박할 요랬어.
And so yes, then there's kind of like when we start to contemplate, then we can really recognize countless ways in which we can engage in benefit towards others, even if it's just on the kind of the title of physically benefiting. Even if we're kind of walking on a path and we see an insect in danger, we can physically remove that creature, and with a good mind, if we're doing that with a good beneficial mind, that's something of tremendous benefit. And that to view harm is very clearly saying that harm is not just harmful towards others, but it's also harming ourselves, and to eradicate that sort of behavior in all ways, not just physically. And so it's kind of very important to do that. The second of these subheadings is focused on the point saying that sustaining your clinging to the body, even though it does absolutely nothing, is incorrect, inappropriate. And that here is kind of pointing out to the fact that when there is any opportunity to kind of put the body into service like that, to benefit, we must take it. We must take all opportunity.
But also look at the Johnson shoot and go look at the top at that Johnson done and read the page of money is down and did Johnson down and talk about the top, Pamato, and digger delaying Yanga the top, Miki Vechola, and the page down. Look at Miki Wachia, Nagi Miki, Dilla page down at the top, look at that double Majam Yaga Morata. 마전에 야가 좋아서 차들이 what listen 딱 이제 되게 고바 시바잖아. 딱 뭐유 내수 시바이나 딱 루티 아니 딱뭐 자야 돼 고바 시바잖아. 아니 고바도 투발 아니 배주 땅도 받잖아. 그러다 다들 그거 가서 그래 딱 가서 동해 탐제가 따와도 뭔가 말이 배지와 뭔배 온게 아니 루티 배주 lok발을 더 되게 열어 봐. 지난 루 강에 딱뭐 자야 돼 가서 배주 lok발을 치네. 아니 Ransin Nicola Nuke, and Mutun Dunga Yonde. What are the days you get? And Jula Bejutan Chinde, and Lu Tawajawa, the Gomajoba Solachan. Gomajoba Solachan. What did Neta Lego?
And so again, this particular verse is going to deal with the notion that, you know, if we aren't proactive in using our body for virtue, then we really have to question all of this like intensive care that we're giving to the body, the expense of looking after the body, and so on. And that the other issue is that, you know, if you aren't directed towards benefit, then it's very likely that you're going to be inclined towards non-virtue physical, in a physical sense, in a verbal sense, in a mental sense. And that therefore, in that situation, if you're really only using the body for non-virtue, then it's probably better that you wouldn't care for the body at all, because it's really not reality. Because reality tells us, through the logic that we have seen so far, that to use the body towards virtue is what gives the body meaning. It makes it meaningful, and that's if we are misusing the body, you know, not for virtue but engaging in non-virtuous activities, this is true back through, you know, the ignorance of not being able to grasp reality correctly. And so this is kind of realizing that, you know, and that realizing that this such harm that we engage the body in is not just harmful to others but harmful to ourselves as well. And to kind of saying in that situation, with that attitude, there's kind of no point in caring for the body.
동네 시부정보다 딱 맞지랑저로 다 제차배처럼 다 류디 되게 편바 주변에 류라 되게 편바 주변에 아니 류디 거바 가르치기도 거바 가르치도도 다 편도 납첨부 가르치도 대 제도에 누가 되게 렌토 맞지 모르스 못다 로아 페나 지금 지금 페나 제다 소라 제바이나 제다데 쿠란라 내가 가르치고 이만 내가 되다 되면 미끌레도 책이도 페나 내가 책이나 아니 되다 되면 라제 책이로 와 대대가 내 쿠란라 거에 내가 되다 되면 미지 말아나 그래서 미디 되다 되면 제도고 뭐도나 콜라라자에 책이 말에 코드 제와이 지금 말아 봐 지금 말아 봐 다 쿠란 게 된다 가르쳐 다 되다 진짜 말아도 류라 다 칼라테 거에다 류라 고요 거에다 야가다 군가게 민자와 지고에다 되게 그거 보다 류원의 마지랑제 차고 다 류들 고부였다. 다디 제차배절다 류디게 딱 말아줄 편바 가르 죽도고도 다 죽도와데 아니 그래서 뒤주 딱달 편바들 렌토가 지고 그랬어. 이 레마도나 먼저 류들 편바 주나 소소 깔래잖아 류대체도 다 그래서 류대체도 소소 깔래 시비 잡대와데 아니 그방 문에도 매딩 소리졌다. 그방 문에도 매딩이 타마타마다 딩gel을 쉬번에 시잖아. 지금 쪽바다 집바다 된데 소에 소라스당 야매나 지금 가서래 지금 다 지금 타마 시도도 다 가져 sem제 바사고에나 가르치면 되게 그 세기도 다 수수 딱 잡대봐 소리 잡다 저다 첨부 가야 민도 왔어. 다 저다 첨부 가야 민도 왔어. 왔다 저다 되려고도
So here, but of course, just the very fact of having a body means that we have to care for it anyway. We have no choice in the matter. It needs food for energy. It needs clothing, whether it's in the summer to cool down, whether it's in the winter to stay warm. We are kind of like it's a binding contract that once you have a body, you have to a certain extent look after it. And so, and if there are problems, we have to kind of overcome those problems with the body. So it's very important to kind of take the attitude that you, on the one hand, you don't become obsessed with just the processes of the body like that, but rather to see that, okay, body, I've given you your food, I've clothed you, I've looked after you as I should, as is necessary, and now you must engage in virtue, in benefiting others. This is what makes all of this meaningful. And so this is kind of like to actually even take it as a responsibility of really making sure that the body is engaged in the maximum, most massive benefit possible in all situations at all times. It's like you're saying you are working and you do the work and you get the wages. So it's like the body has been given its wages. Now it needs to do its work, its wages of clothing and food and so on. And so again, if it's given these wages and no work is happening, then of course you're going to kind of restrain from giving these wages. You're not going to pay the person if they're not doing the work. But you have this kind of very straightforward relationship with the body in that way. What is the most beneficial thing I can do right now, and making sure my timing is good to benefit others, and to kind of like know that I have a short window of opportunity to be able to do this. So it's kind of really fitting that I do it in the most focused, most beneficial way possible, and to use the body, because at the end, everything is going to break down. My digestive system is not going to work. I will be, dead, buried, food for worms and other creatures. And so it's kind of saying there's no meaning in that whatsoever. And so there's this very clear choice, is that recognize the purpose of the body, having the body, and to be able to put it to work for that purpose. And that's what makes it the most meaningful possible.
What is it? I think it's our loss one.
Lomas
Gonda. Which is what the legend because Nibata because Jawa Jungse Jang Mijava Shebe Janja Miri Pene because the Jayo Kodo Mituba, Gola Soba Mijena, Louis the New Jashendrona, Chocochi the Shatan sauce.
And so that particular verse is that second one of saying again, sustaining, your just clinging towards the body when it's doing absolutely nothing is just inappropriate. Verse number 68 reads, if servants are not given clothing and so forth when they are unable to be employed, then why do you exhaust yourself looking after the flesh alone, when even though caring for the body, it goes elsewhere?
What the Tapena Jidena Taka Toyota, Lega Kusa, because a Jibby 자와고도 메도 벌사 자와고도 뭐다 내가 그 마도 거잖아 라 아니 제 어떻게 가서다 저 가서데 저기 제다소로데 제베 세고라서 같이 말 왔다 소소가 저기 제네 내가 그에 저도 친구 여봐서 아니 그래서 이제는 다 류데 배바 되면이다 다 배바 배주 제는 거서 류디 장네 아니 세고 장바 디 아니 소소 그바 모조다 전도 저거는 최고 때 최네 지대 샤당데 샤세세도 소와자다 같이 칼레 자는 가르치는 소와치고 왔다 그거 죽으면도 왔어 근데 오늘잖아 소 머리가 소라 차기도 왔어 이내 다 탑시여 말이야 봐도 쏘고 왔다 동네 연구로 와 동네 되고 말와 동네 연구에도 다 같이나 야가도 군가게 고고 전에 거다가지 맞잖아 동네 연구래 세고도나 두두두 맞잖아 동네 연구래 다들 쏘고 봤잖아 다소 참여절 로 가서 먼저 다다 가서 맨다 저와 레과 있으면서 카다 사야 되게 칼라다 사야 되게 맹기 되셔샤네 가서 루소에 저도 맹기 되셔샤네 아니 루소 산에 아니 되게 페마 주베도 거바 샤는 치마이나 딱 이제 잔주 세메 냠내 지금 속에 선제 탐색에도 산제 고마 주고 저거 왔다 되게 지고 그랬어 먼저 칼라 사야다 아니 거다 되게 루부 소에 루부 따고자에 그 맨소로 쳤네 어딘데 아니 딜레 때네 딜레 착sem 매바체 아니 루스루 니바체 차사도 디 심제 탐제도 산제 고마 주벨 다 배주치 그랬어 딜레 뽕도 받고 그랬어 딜레 뽕 마도이나 아니 루다 루데 칼레자노 소바들 그바 가야 매긴 차주고 뒀어 수고요라
And so here it's referring to the situation where a particular person or lord has servants. But if there's no work for these servants, there's no requirement on the lord to pay them in food or clothing. And so it's referring to this to the body, that if you kind of like have been caring for this body, putting in a lot of effort in that way, but the body goes elsewhere, meaning it dies and kind of like disintegrates, and then why is it that you exhaust yourself in doing this, kind of sustaining it this way for doing absolutely nothing? And so that's kind of like incorrect, and pointing out this point here that yes, of course we have to care for the body. It's if we don't, then we're going to suffer, and that's very, very clear. We don't feed ourselves properly, we suffer. We don't clothe ourselves properly, we're going to catch flu and so on. And so it's kind of like the suffering is the result of not caring for the body, and that but it's the purpose for which we eat and clothe the body should be very, very clear. And indeed, in Bodhisattva practice, it's referred to the beautiful practice of considering any food and drink and so on that you have as medicine to sustain the body. Why? I need that energy. I need that flexibility to work and benefit for others, and use every kind of like speck of energy towards that extent. Therefore, we see all of what we eat and consume as medicine, and that is something that helps to reduce the attachment towards the body and towards kind of food and so on. But it puts us in a kind of a best sort of headspace to benefit others. So I have this extraordinary energy from the medicine that I've received that is kind of directed towards benefiting others. And so to that extent, yes, we care, and to that extent, we put the body into service for others. And it's kind of making the stark contrast here that it's when you don't do anything at all, but you're constantly having to service the body in one way or another, putting out small kind of health issues and fires, and also feeding yourself the special diet and so on. But if you're doing absolutely nothing, then it's kind of saying all that effort is for nothing. There's no meaning behind it.
다 반제 양 디시온도 뭐도 카팔로에 기자마다 오다 코트 쳐주고면도 코트 칼라사는 초과요 디스함을 싸우는다 나는 수잔 Sula Chanima, the Pai Chajo Mar, Papa Garchin Korazore. Shella Sama Matana, Rala to Samatan, Tange Chumatun and Savan, Chomin do some something. Janjo Sembe Namles, the Casoda, Katsulo Ekita, Capalo Ekitamares, Young Gabriel, Capalo and the Joina, and it, Tigasa Guchaglia. That the Katsulo Channel, Negi says, Sayeti, and it seems that Tamja the Sanya come back Gulaji, Tomato, and think yes, Sasa what the Guamitu. And it did a Tama, yes, yes, I jet, a loot up with Java, Tama, and it because she told you, and the same just saying each other. Double Java soldier, Kovachibu to Gumandu. Then they in Za, what I think the Degi Gaso de Dilla, Gaso de Luti, Govaning a Shingitu, because Tabata Tamji came to University. You and then to ending a page down to Mecheto, yes, says, some such and Dagaja, Katsuloni. The legend Gemato and it says about the government Katsulo and Gem, the Capalo catches out in the Maris, yeah.
So it's very much important to emphasize here that all of what is being advised here is not kind of like pointing outwards and saying, oh, that you and others are like this or not using their body the correct way. It's all for our own advice. It's kind of like we must look within, that the gaze is inwards always from the Bodhisattva's point of view, and that they are asking the question, that if we are not engaging in spiritual practice, that then there's an issue, there's something that has to be addressed. And so the Bodhisattva is saying, yes, I'm eating this food and clothing myself in this way, looking after the body in this way. Does it follow that I am also therefore using all of that advantage to benefit others, to be a benefit to all? Because I know death is going to come, death is definite, and that once the body is separated from the mind, it becomes just food for other creatures. And so therefore, I know the meaning of having a body. I know the purpose that I must aim for, the state of liberation and the omniscient state of enlightenment. And therefore, I must dedicate myself anew constantly to being able to use the sustenance, the medicine I give my body in order to be able to facilitate the benefit of others. And so that's the purpose of having this body.
Because in the because the public finance came out because the Liu Tangbe Kala Chanju same pay to get the share and never got the Chanju same song and that in about and the same song that I'm like a secret smart child and Chanju was Seba Suga, that's some of the Malay or but the Chitami get the kind of your marwa. That did part question, oh, that can say young some and Mambe Chico something. Look down to the madam, never your marwa, take us a miss some loss in the Kansas. That because the Chanju Sabasuga, so Samotanda, and it's Rango Lunga used to the Tola Majoa. They get something and it Tabata Tamji Kembege, and it goes on Gula, and the round member to edge. That is Chico some daddy, Chidan the Sugu Yorba. This Sugu Yorba, what did it?
And so, again, that this is so important that we make sure that all of this advice is for us, for anybody on the Bodhisattva path, and that it's not kind of to be disseminated, to kind of point it out to others. I mean, looking down and pointing at, oh, you're misusing your life and so on and so on. I mean, there are people who don't accept the spiritual practice whatsoever, and so that's their business, that's their life. We don't have a right to interfere with the choices they make, but we have to be in control of the choices that we make with regard to ourselves, in particular when we're on the Bodhisattva path. And we ask the question, like, what is Bodhisattva practice? And that's kind of like, to understand what our way of thinking should be. And that is kind of not to waste this amazing opportunity that we have here now, when we are compass mentors, when we have health, to be able to use every single benefit, every single kind of like advantage we have to be of benefit to others.
장주 선바 속에 나랑서 미 루덴 쉬울 개체 못 쓰는 거 요래. 장주 선배냐면은 로 앞에 자자마다 대화 쟁게 아니 장주 선바 속에 아니 나랑서 디 가서도 미 직된들라 나랑서 미 직된들라 아니 개바 쇼스를 편받던 거 요래. 응와 지금 요래. 가르스나 딜라 아니 저 가서래 최 주변에 통계 현대민다 어제 벌써 근데 대화 쟁라 아니 동해 요 말이야. 동해 매도 아니 년종 뿌다고 계획이 아니 차전 창거 요 말이야. 확도도 장주서 봐 사당보아 지바이나 사당보아 딜라 아니 저게 사당보게 아니 저 가서래 딱간자 저 토란 토발라 아니 근데 그 장주가 셈데 15주 또 쳐보고 딜라 아니 년종 또 쳐보 15주 거고 년종 또 쳐보 15주 용하라 동행게 아니 게 맞잖아 년종 또 쳐보 게 두고 말다 먼저 나라서 내서 딜라 아니 랑다시 강가라다 동해직 저거 동해직 연구에 동해직 지금 저거 동해 좀 동해 것을 더 쉬우지 맞아 년종 계산에 딱 가서 통계 라면 봐지 봐서 안돼 대 가서 딱 모아 지기요래 뭐다 된대게 내다 집어서 다 대계산에 나랑 속에 장주가 셈 냠내 지금서 양말 땅매를 쉬어요 봐서 와다디 쉬어요 마다스 아니 룰라 차네 야 도다 처음에 봐 처음 주마도 망부차기래 된대요서 아니 루이티 최주배 튕겨라 삼로당도 삼로 된데스 당제네 아니 최주배 튕겨라 도토바 속을 해서 나가자 되게 내고요 봐.
So to emphasize the importance of having this human body, it's very well known that the Bodhisattvas in the Pure Land of Sukhavati actually pray and dedicate to be reborn in this world as a human being, to have this human existence. Why? It's because in Sukhavati there's no suffering. So it's extremely difficult to be able to generate a pure renunciation. And so it's kind of saying here at the kind of like at the first Bodhisattva ground, one has attained the path of seeing. And so it comes with it tremendous like power and qualities to engage in positive and beneficial practice. But in order to get there, one needs an extraordinary realization of renunciation, right? And so therefore, it's this particular kind of rebirth here as a human being that provides the perfect training ground to be able to generate such renunciation. This kind of suffering here, one suffering after another, we all, very, very aware of it. But it's how we're able to view that and to transform that is kind of something that is kind of envied by the great bodhisattvas on the first ground, or in the land of Sukhavati and so on, pure land of Sukhavati. They actually make aspirational prayers to be reborn here in order to be able to develop that particular quality. And so it's here to actually, get over the idea that, I'm in this particular scenario, in this particular situation, I just don't have the necessary conducive conditions to engage in spiritual practice right now. In fact, you have bodhisattvas looking down here going, wishing they could be in your situation, because they have to gain the view that actually all the conditions that we have here are perfect for engaging in spiritual practice. And so therefore that should really be an inspiration for us to rededicate ourselves more intensely.
어떻게 다 되네 이거 되네 자기 좀 돼야 돼. 양 알아도 돼. 걔 알아도 내 당보 알아. 야 뭐데 자기한테 이제 받은 거서 뭐 맞아야지. 아니 배주 로발로 더 되게 요사. 아니 방도도 랑게 루디. 아니 지금 개월아 따다 그 마도 받잖아. 되게 지금 더 아니 그 투배쳐도 아니 게세 시war라겠다. 지금 가서데 지금 가서데 안디게 다 지금 가서데 지금 초라만도바 되게 그 철주에 튕겨를 줘도 용해서 아니 삼로당다 되게 땅으로 다 상다 거름진의 송구도 와 거름 좀 송구도 와 어디래
And so it's for this reason, because we are beginners, because we kind of like don't recognize the great advantage of being born here, of having this kind of body, because therefore we're more likely to abuse and misuse our body in this situation. And that the master Shantideva has pointed out, this kind of order of verses to kind of re-emphasize, to kind of clear the kind of ignorance from our view, and to kind of re-emphasize why a human body is so important, and therefore to recognize that key element in order not to waste this kind of short stay we have as a human being, and to use it correctly, to use it for the right reason. The third of those subheadings was that once wages have been given, then the body can be pressed into the meaningful. So verse number 69 says, having paid my body its wages, I shall engage it in making my life meaningful. But if my body is of no benefit, then I shall not give it anything. So here, this verse, it's kind of speaking from the point of view of those who have bodhisattvas, taken on the bodhisattva vows, accepted those vows, and then kind of what are the responsibilities thereafter. And so it's saying here, for example, if you give the body its wages in terms of food and clothing and so on, then it's right that you should engage the body in virtue. And that's kind of in general, in particular, in a bodhisattva's point of view, you have once you've taken on those vows, you actually dedicated your actual body, all your body, speech, and mind, but body in particular here to be of benefit to others. It's already there. And so that the meaning here is to attain the state of liberation and the omniscient state of enlightenment. And that's what the purpose of a bodhisattva is. And that's what the purpose for using our body is, to have that motivation, to attain that. And it's kind of saying here as well, if you don't do that, if it's kind of like only using the body or misusing, as I should say, the body for suffering, here then, if there's absolutely no benefit coming from the body, even after it's had its wages like that, then one is kind of justified in not giving the body its wages of food and clothing and so on.
다가저 최주에 튕겨라 폐그 새 고여서 되게도 거저 초에 쳐도 되게 맞지를 않잖아 와 대면바전에 다가저 저거 밤에 제에 그 제고요 말했으면 다 딜레 고쳐서 봐 최주에 튕겨라 펜토에 되게 고바지를 이제 딜레 셰베 되게 진거에 개요 말했으면 좋지.
So it's kind of saying here, yes, of course. It's again making this distinction that in terms of those, if you're on the road to enlightenment and practicing the Bodhisattva path, then that you need to make every act of your what you're doing with your body meaningful. To that extent, yes, you need to be able to feed the body well, to clothe the body well, to kind of care for the body well. Again, there's kind of medicine here. Why? What the key distinction is that you are thereafter using the body to engage in spiritual practice. You're using the body to benefit others. It's making the distinction that if not doing that, having already dedicated yourself in that way, already on the path, then one has to question why you are really caring for the body in such a way.
먼저 셴라 페바 주고 있어요. 당보 셴라 페바 돌아 니라 랑기 류데 페바 주고 맞아 소토고 식으로 와. 그러와. 먼저 셴라 페바 주고서 셴 개와 주비에 거여서 내라고 좀 말아 봐. 다 랑기 류가 되게데 다가자 이 되게데 개와 둘라 거여야 돼. 랑라 랑와 유게 와. 셴 수가라 띄고 말아 봐. 다셴 개와를 거여서 그 내라고 말아 봐. 그러와. 다셴 개와를 거여 봐라. And
especially, of course, when it comes to benefiting others, it's not necessarily a very simple thing to be able to do. That in order to kind of benefit others in that way, we have to, in a sense, to benefit ourselves. And that means looking after body, speech, and mind. And it's kind of like, say, to exhort ourselves towards a virtue, to be really firmly founded in that aspiration, rather than, jumping the gun and keep exhorting others to engage in virtue. They may not be ready for that. They may not accept that. But you have control over what you do with your own body, speech, and mind. So here is that same kind of like coming back to that emphasis that yes, the goal is to benefit others, but you have to have your own body, speech, and mind sorted out to do that.
Because rangi lunga yisumde, ane rangla ongerwa, ane rangi rangla onde, ane di ko peju tang tubala peju jene tang tuba so tuede, ta ko 제대야 소소와 다 셰스긴도 또 타입에 막게 진짜 초지나 타이어 전전에 감다 매번 나서 와지래 아 네가 그 갈리 가서 개발을 개발봐 계절에만 더 남자 좀 돼야지 계절 말와 어때
So yes, it's our own body, speech, and mind that we can gain control over, and it's from that sense of control to endeavor to benefit others. It puts us in a much better position to be able to do that when we have control over our body, speech, and mind. And of course, we have to take the long-term approach because sentient beings are endless. The dispositions of sentient beings are endless, and therefore, it's a project from eon to eon to be able to do that.
다 시바 주의 로샤데서 주의 로샤데 심제 타다게 돈주고 리반이 자war래 조당원에 땐잠도 르라 주의 로샤데 심제난제 돈주치 이신기네 루수주르차
The fourth of these subheadings was to conceive of our body as a boat in order to fulfill the purpose of all sentient beings. Verse number 70 states, I should conceive of my body as both a mere support for coming and going, and in order to benefit all others, transform it into a wish-fulfilling body.
다 간자 제 문에다 내게 개세게 줘봐라 lov게 아니 저기 셀라 편바 주빈 있으게 문에다는 샘상비 냠네 지금 줘봐 이나 왔다 저다 되는 거고였다 그러 랑게 지금 가서데 딱 간자 류소를 찾잖아 아니 류디 딱 그 지금 맞아 딱 보자고 요래 아니 딱 보자네 딱 간자 제 지금 딱 보자는 배주여 봐서 것도 다들 가르스는 지금 저당 호에 된점도 다지 야조 마조 제다 다 지금 류를 된 거 얘기 류를 된 거 얘기 안다 내다지 차고 유도 아니 류도 다 보자고 유도 아니 저당 호에 된점도 다 된점도 아니 류를 주의로 샤는스다 그러다 그냥 다 파조하다 추로 호에 된점도 된되게 된사지 보고 된사 점도 아 류라서 거에 류데 아니 가라서 다다 내서도 아니 코아 안데네 코아의 자소디 파료도 좋아라 다 코아디 자소를 빼자 아니 자소되는 파료도 좋아라 다 지금 때는 조고요로 아니 어디 찔러 때는 조고도 저에 주의 로샤데 되는 류찔러 때는 아니 파도 도와치 주의 로샤데서 다 주의 로샤는 다 가져서 심제 탐제제 심제 진짜 마게 심제 남제 된주베 치도 치 마게 심제 탐제게 된주베 치 이 산제지 꾸이 이신게 노부르 부체 답이어서 루스 주에 좋아장고서 왔다 딜라 때네 아니 다 딜 때네 아니 지금 가서다 다 가자 심제 탐제게 된 투투게게 아니 저 가서다 저 가서 손이 꾸시 다 산제 꾸다 이신 노부 다 가자 저 답이어서 루스 주네 다 가자 심제게 빼면 흔들어 투투게 이신게 노부 답이 루스 주와 장고서 왔다 대대지 제투에 치도 아니 류티 라다 가자 저 왔다 가자 지금我这什么当过的事，叫我想。
And so this is very much in the context of, again, the Bodhisattva ideal and in line with the Bodhisattva practice, that to be able to transform kind of our mundane capacity into a capacity that can benefit all the sentient beings, and that we care for the body, we kind of use the body, and so it's saying here that you use it as this basis, here pointing out, for when we kind of received as a kind of a mere support for coming and going, and that here is saying we can kind of mentally transform that into a vessel that to be able to take us across the great ocean of cyclic existence itself, and that this then in order to benefit all sentient beings, we are transforming that into our own kind of mundane body into the wish-fulfilling body of a Buddha. And so that is kind of like, really being able to, in a situation, in that sort of transformation, to be in a place to fulfill the purpose of all sentient beings quickly and easily.
我这个短大第一切的，短大第一切的，他俺说密语的，甚至他们这个三界恐怕诸位切的应该啥，他的呢应该啥，俺说驴子嘛的，他啥也呢，同也呢，给这些呢，没得这话几个也完了的，俺大概那些个，你当跟着些吧，呢，我打点个，俺告诉的，他干这种，那这个的他们这，俺就告诉的，这个我说就是呢。 아니 저게 가서다 다 저게 샘제게 된 주베치도 산제 고마 주베게 주 그러다 이신게 노부답이 다 이신게 노부스게 다 간자 저게 지 가서다 디 아니 저게 답을 약고 잡딜래 지 가서다 제도도 약고 제도 아니 소소 되바 그가 주투에게 아니 가르 거고 이나 딜래 주나 딜래 때는 연구이어서 다 지대나 연구이어서인데 어디 다 지금 송주처럼 다 딘능신제나 산제게 꾸데다 딜래 하가 차도로 내가 다 사두고 돼 탐제 좀 두고게 되는지 뭐 인도 어다 된데 그죠 심제 감다 매봐 발을 내와 지다와 신경 심제가 펴봐 빼멜론도 좀 두고 열어 어다 된데 그 주위에게 아니 귤로 더 두고 그랬어 right? Chiche choose draw the dear what to be choose draw. Sanjay Kumar to be due to draw to watch. What are the Chiku just way?
And so here it's to exhort ourselves to really kind of like maintain focus on our key objective of having been born into this life, and that is to obviously work toward the state of enlightenment to benefit all sentient beings. Therefore, it's not just indeed, just what situations or actions you place your body in, but indeed in every possible action, interaction that we have this in mind. We have this main focus in mind, whether we're eating or drinking or interacting and talking with other people, whatever, any situation that we find ourselves in, directly and indirectly, we are, creating the causes on our own mind stream to quickly attain that state of enlightenment. And that's here it's we're kind of using the beautiful image of the wish fulfilling gem, which legend has it that when it can provide you whatever you actually want in a mundane sense, in a worldly sense, you can get it. And so it's actually what pointed out here is that in fact what we have is even better than a wish fulfilling gem, because we can go beyond kind of providing a worldly benefit. Kind of the benefit to attain the state of enlightenment is something extraordinary in itself. And so that is kind of what we are, again, kind of the key focus here is that what you have is extraordinary. What you can do with it is even more extraordinary than a wish fulfilling gem. And therefore, don't lose sight of that. Maintain focus on your objective in this life. And that is to do whatever you possibly can to attain the state of enlightenment to benefit all sentient beings. And that should be manifest in every tiny action that you engage in.
What did the rank 가서 저 가리 제바 이네 가리 삼로 땅거 가리 제바 이네 삼로 돈에 타바다 탐지 개베 길로 줘도 소구도 아니 딜라 아니 잼바다 시신게 아니 잘았제네 아니 디 제수 줘도 왔지 디도 뭐 줘도 했지 아니 가서 디 시신 가서 잼바다 시신게 잘았제네 아니 그 옥매도 산지게 아니 산지게 길로 줘도 했지 산지 길로 줘도 했지 what did it
And so whatever we do, that our thinking is always motivated by the wish to attain the state of enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. The more we're able to instill that as our motivation to do anything, whatever we are engaged in at all times, and also that we are, employing mindfulness and alertness as the checking process to ensure that our motivation is sincere, that it is on point, and that the more we are able to do that, the more this becomes an automatic and effortless process, and we will be creating those causes. So let's leave it there for today.
아니 단단 먼저 뒤인데라 딱가자 랑게 집어라 라마 샤자스게 세담이와 어들레샤 어들레샤 다드네 다다긴 슈바네 신체잖아 아니 제 가소라 다긴 슈바네 신체잖아 감송 좋아래도 가봐 개바 이바이나야 가봐 개바 이바이나야 동엘레 마테바레 근데 이바 인사 아니 저게 동엘레 마테바 인사 다 동엘 여바 인사 딱 뭐절 동네 임바도 못네 딱 어제 캡상 가를 내도 그래 캡상 가를 내도 그랬으나 뭐서 년종 개도 왔다 동네 매바이나 뭐서 년종 개도 뭐다 동네 매바 동네 임바 뭐마트 바이나 뭐서 년종 개도 뭐다 근데서 년종 됐다 시우리 개지 버려도 그래서 년종 매나 장주가 셈 용금도 와 장주가 셈디 년종라 때네 용고도 랑 코하기 동에 나줄 삼로탄도 년종께 셴 코에 동에 나줄 삼로탄도 아니 닝제께도 와 아니 딜라 때네 가르가서 닝제 딜라 때네 아니 가서 가서 동네에 가서 대화도 된도게 아니 장바게 것도 될라 되네 아니 심제시 아니 동네 탐제 대화 탐제도 얘기 지금 학습 기한 것도 학습 될라 되네 다 심제 탐제 산제 고마 심제 탐제 산제 고마 가서래 다 간제 아니 지금 내 주변에서 주가지고 주마도 세번서 다들 주도에 누가 가봐도 산제 고마 맞도는 두고면도 쓰는 아니 심제 탐제 산제 고마 주변 어디 기한 것도 근데 이마인도 딱 연중인데 매번 탑에 되는 거죠. 근데 이마서 딱 동네 요래 동네도 가서 먹어야 돼. 동네도 먹어야 돼. 동네도 이마 뭐 저당 어디 캡상 갈래고 좀 연중 깨도 봐. 다들 어디 캡상지로 와. 캡상지로 와. 동네도 사는 미서 받잖아. 대화사 말이 받 오다 동네도 좀 먹다 셈마기 말이 대화사 동네 될라 되네. 아니 동네 될라 타도 로킹도 봐. 되더라도 나라서 미게 남주라 안 남주게 누바시 째두고도 다들 이번에서 어디 고바시 했잖아 동네 여바 인자 아니 동네도 못쳐 보고 그래 동네 뭐 맞잖아 동네 이봐 하고 말 하되게 되마 그래서 못쳐한테 아니 들은 여바 저 년중께 감도 좋아를 버리 가와게 와나 동네를 맞대와 이바디 못쳐한테 여바 저 년중께는 아니 되네 년중 예배 로데 랑이닝데 뺨마 답제를 좀 소서 고바시
And so we kind of, again, in our dissolution, we begin by really contemplating again the suffering within the 6 rounds of existence, that in fact, nobody gets beyond suffering within those 6 rounds in cyclic existence. And that here we must see, what is the kind of the profit in that situation? How can we use that situation? Cyclic existence is in the nature of suffering. But from contemplating that, we can develop a sense of renunciation. And why is renunciation important? Because it forms the basis on which we can then generate the compassion. And that's important. And that we must be able to see that there is kind of meaning in the suffering that we're contemplating in order to do that, because we must have renunciation in order to be able to generate the kind of like compassion. And from the mind of compassion, of course, that is the mind which cannot bear to have people suffering, wishing to separate people from their suffering. Arises then the mind of kind of love, of wishing to place all sentient beings in happiness, and from that, the kind of twin minds arises this special intention of our taking personal responsibility to do something about that, and of course that leads to our contemplation of what is the best thing I can do. The best thing I can do is to attain the state of enlightenment, in order to be able to benefit sentient beings, to remove them from this kind of suffering. And of course, that mind that arises is the mind of bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment. And we can see how it is impossible without renunciation. It is based on renunciation. Like we don't want suffering, we don't need suffering, but say, what is the use of this suffering? The use of this suffering is through contemplation that we can generate renunciation. And that that is kind of saying that is kind of like no point in being unhappy about that, or saying, oh, poor me, and so on. We can say, no, I can look at this, perceive this from a different angle. It's going to help me to attain a state of liberation and the omniscient state of enlightenment. This is really employing our human intelligence to the issue. We can recognize what suffering is, what the situation is. We recognize that suffering can lead to our sense of renunciation. And we know that renunciation is the kind of what allows for the seed of compassion to grow.
어디 is 나라도 다 삼로 약을 땅 셈이나 아니 단데 직대 난욕 먹고 쉬우도 다 내가 가서 다 남지 뉴스나 용한테 얘기다 채널 뉴스 그 채널 강가나 용한테 욕다 되겠지 오 되게 되는가 다 와다 이제 욕다도 많이 받잖아 탐박해만 와다디 욕다 뭐처럼 어디 코아래 동네 연구로 코알 마다보다 동네 연구로서 뭐처럼 아니 내버려 연중 계열 배주 땅도나 아니 욕다 되게 가 소설 팬도스 와 zamolenta myogo to da sosolo pendos ma wada de nyeba jo nyenjung ge ge le beju tang to na ana sosolo kyamsan jo ale kyamsan len to wa da de le iza wada le ga je de nyenjung de kom je ne ani rang ni de pema da bye je ju so san do kong ba she de ne ani ja da simje tamje ge do sanje kuma ju bi yi se gen ju bi yi se nga de ka ba do zhe jue ne de ge ne xin je zhe jue ne ani lu da sim ga le pa zhe ba zhe jue zhe ani de le 많이 바다가랑 갈 셈샤네 가자 가슴 다가랑 갈 바셈샤 아니 된대게 동반이 예배 로데 된대게 가서 대 빼매된도 니가 빼매된도 다 간자 빼마 담아지면도 님의 좀 약화와 교소 삼사자 되네 심지어 탐제게도 산제 고만 요한을 마다면 탐에도 타바 지리 삼사고 로지게 코다 전 밖에 안에 된대 그 로지 다외진 거 약화와지 님의도 교소 삼사 어디를 공부하셔
And so when we look into, doesn't take much investigation for us to see that the world kind of like is inundated with troubles and conflicts and suffering of one sort or another. Any news bulletin that we see is kind of filled with this kind of news. And if we just kind of look at it and kind of get depressed about it or happy about it, that's kind of no point in that. Better not to look at the news in that sense. But when we look at it in the context of this being cyclic existence, suffering being the nature of cyclic existence, we immediately have a context in which to put all of these terrible things that are happening and going, what can you expect that this is cyclic existence? So it kind of gives you an added impulse to gain definite emergence from this reality. That's renunciation, and saying I must get myself out of here. And so it's kind of like really, because you can't get beyond suffering once you're in cyclic existence. And so that means then there's something beneficial in the way you're looking at the news. You're taking what's beneficial out of it. And so that's extremely important. And to meditate on that as much as you possibly can, and to generate this real strong sense of renunciation, of gaining definite emergence from cyclic existence. And this is kind of then represented, symbolized by the lotus moon seed mandala that is at our heart center. And that then the I that is involved in that, I want to attain definite emergence from cyclic existences. We search for that as we did before, looking for where this so-called objectively existent self could be in the body, the mind, and reaching that point of just not finding that mere absence of the object of negation, trying to place our mind as much as possible on just that kind of lack of any objective existence. And from that arises the sun disk mandala seed. And then the kind of the wish to attain the state of enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. I will do this. I'll take special responsibility for doing this myself. You can see the possibility of it because of the lack of objective existence. And I will generate this in my mind. This generation is the mind of enlightenment, which is symbolized by the moon disk mandala.
ane kasa lama shaja single ane sonde chana pande sawe lama ro moche tagi ninga pe me da karishimo kusu tuju muru sato so sonde chana tamyo ka so pe ane nibe ka so shu sumbe ka tendu shuna sanje ko ma to go de che so samja cha ane tele pe ma dama je wa tindas ma kaso ne ane namju ning nya zane shin diga na doji ka bu sanga ba cha ba je ka ke ane tago to ane je ka so to be sanga dai to mun mamsa dai to mun mamne so tele ane jeju jambe nga so omara pasana ti de corazon ko tele tende nga ye tama he to ma da shamala so astene nga de basum ko de wodele je ko ba she.
So this is the pre-prepared seat at our heart center, and then we make the invocation verse to invite the Buddha on our crown to join us there. And so we say, "Oh, glorious and precious root Guru, come take your lotus and moonseed placed here on my heart. Keep me safe in your kindness. Bestow on me the attainments of body, speech, and mind." At the end of that first recitation, the figure of the Buddha starts to move down through our central channel. And then at the end of the second recitation of that verse, the Buddha arrives at our pre-prepared seat at the heart. And at the end of the third recitation, we have the certainty that the Buddha will remain with us in his care until we attain that state of enlightenment. We rejoice at this point, and that then the petals of the lotus fold over and are sealed at the tip by a fine-formed white vajra. The petals then are surrounded by three mantras. The name mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha in a clockwise direction, and the mantra of Manjushri in an anti-clockwise direction, and the mantra of dependent origination again in a clockwise direction.
어딜래자 아니 되네 다 가자지 랑이 닌가 위해서 아니 가서데 라마샤자세게 아니 나와티 구송토를 위해서 빠도 매버트네 다 가자지 어제 다 가자지 구송토를 위해서 빠도 매버트네 랑이 지원에 간데 발라 아니 왜세기 잡잖아 아니 토마 매번 디바데 디바 켜봐줘야 아니 지금 소주와 마지막에 미상와 줘봐 아니 저 주인 담아 쓰던 같이 나선에서 로달라스나 다가 세딜라 사와 생가마티 토마 매번 사베 아니 저다 지가서데 디바데 타자바 장세단에 제바 하나마다 라신 하나마다 녀바 타자바 장세 다바 종수상서 어디를 고마시
And that then from the heart center of the figure of the Buddha at our heart, light rays begin to emanate from the heart center, permeating through the petals of the lotus, through every cell of our bodies, and all our body, speech, and mind, from the crown of the head down to the soles of the feet, and begin the process of purifying all our negativities. Negativities that have accumulated since the beginning of time, negativities related to the body of killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct, of speech, being lying, a harsh speech, divisive speech, and idle gossip, of the mind being covetousness, malicious intent, and wrong view, all negativities of this life, of previous life, going right back to the beginning of the time, those naturally occurring faults, and those that have been proscribed by the Buddha.
아니 생기 지금 소수탑에 돈받을 가와 잔주스에 라바다 가와 상하게 다지다 가와 다가니 이제 파다 말라 먹어봐다 kim보다 로블라 먹어봐다 조성바송바 저거나 먹어봐다 꾸조스물라 네벨 내게봐다 다배 쳐봐와다 법에 견뎌로 고와다 봐다 선제다 네벨 내게봐라서 디바 미기베 저 다기 기봐다 현재 셀라 기도 주봐다 기발라 제수 이라고 해서 다 디가 탄자 다 저거 가서데 네바 근데 싸와이네 봐 차상스 봐 장시다 봐 중소소 어디로 고마시
And so it's including also the kind of the infractions of any vows that we have taken, be they the Pratimoksha vows, the Bodhisattva vows, or the Tantric vows, any incurrence of fault in those. That's also put up for purification. That any disrespect that we have ever shown to our parents, to our gurus, that is also to be purified, and that any engagement in the abandoning of the Dharma, disparaging the Dharma, or abandoning the Dharma in all its different ways, the engaging in negativities personally ourselves, or kind of enticing others into the engaging in virtue, or rejoicing, in engaging of negativity and rejoicing in negativity as well. All of these are included, and so we include all negativities, whatever they are, without exception, in this process of purification.
다가니 셔랑을 다 지금 루게 나자 최주배 개개 루게 나자 sem게 동네 중시 코바뇨바 자롱 틸레이게 간데 좋아봐 장치다네 하도도다 뉴도 산제 고마 토발라 교체시대 탐에게 나제 해봐서 탐에게 내생이 교한탄제 장네 다발을 좀 다시 찾도록 야고 신중소 서서 고마자.
And that including this is also the negativity leading to any sickness or illness of the body, indeed any sickness or illness of the mind. Also that imbalances in the elements, in our channels, winds and drops, and the main obstacle to our being quickly able to attain enlightenment being ordinary view of seeing everything in its ordinary sense, and to kind of purify that view into pure view. So we this is all included in this purification process.
Lama shaja sanga kude leje chigen chena soso lyuta lama shaja sanga kula jusu sabzacha soso shido chawe semde nyelencha lama shaja sanga tude leje chigen chena soso semde lama shaja sanga tula jusu sabzacha lange lu nga yusumda lama shaja sanga kusu tongo nime jusu sabzacha di dewa dewe tongwa dedo nisuma yishi jusu sabzacha lang nesa ge ne diya nege gyön tanja jan lama shaja sanga gene jika soda ta kanja dawe shido jusu sanga wadana kumbasha.
And then through the combination of my own more subtle wind acting as the substantial cause, together with the body of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, my own body transforms into the enlightened body of the Buddha. And through the combination of my own more subtle mind acting as the substantial cause, together with the mind of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, my own mind is transformed into the enlightened mind of the Buddha. And then wondrously, I recognize that my own body, speech, and mind now are inseparable from the body, speech, and mind of the Buddha. This is something I rejoice in. And this rejoicing produces a sense of bliss, which combines with emptiness, and I abide in the non-dual, the wisdom of non-dual bliss and emptiness. The place that I am in is transformed of its mundane character and is transformed into the pure land of an enlightened being.
Di nala rashi mewa samlata, di tuga le lama shaja sinja pado mewa ta semjenge chanda nyawa patu na kamsuke sinja tamchala ane chasawari shuwa la tene, deda tanya lama shaja sinja kusuto ngo yeme jusu samsa. Deda ge ne deda tamchaja, ne ge gyön tamchaja lama shaja sinja dabe shido jusu samsa cha. Ta kasa rashi sinja tanya lama shaja sinja kusun tudango yeme juwata. Di shido susu kiawa kanchuwa, chuwa ngara jawa yuden chuwa tuza yomari sa di dewa dewe tongba de teto nisimi shikyosu sasa kwasha.
And then seeing myself as completely inseparable from the body of the Buddha, body, speech, and mind, I send out, and also lacking any inherent existence, I send out light rays equal in number to all the sentient beings in all the 6 realms of existence. And upon touching them, they are transformed into enlightened Buddhas. They are a place that they are in is cleared of all fault, and it's transformed into the pure realm, pure land of an enlightened being, of a Buddha. And so this again, allows me to contemplate the fulfillment of the main purpose here, and the kind of elements of leading all the sentient beings to that state of enlightenment, the virtue that has allowed that, that facilitated that, myself as the agent of that virtue. All of which completely lacking any objective existence and do not exist inherently even at the atomical level. This produces a sense of bliss, which again combines with emptiness, and I abide in the wisdom of non-dual bliss and emptiness.
다 가자 심제 탐제기도 산제 고마도 심제 단자 산제 고마를 거기 소다 니마 드릴 거 투수 선을 가고.
That this purpose of leading all sentient beings to the state of enlightenment has been fulfilled today. I completely rejoice in it.
어떻게죠? 다다 이나 다다다도 뭐냐 걸었는데 내가 가면 몇 이제 잡으래. 얘네야 错 너부터 되게 바자 숙성부 쇼사 그래. 다디 제비 마냥 받잖아. 디 다다다디 몇 이제 잡는 뭐냐 걸었는데 용투에게 아니 교류 교와쇼스다 되게 다른 거죠. 최대한 뒤자 말에 다 소소가 단다 보도 다 지가서다 다 단에 손도 다 소소가 저기 기부 중나다 도부 중나다 가르쳐나 맞잖아. 대다 단자 아니 저기 가서도 다 산제 있고 잠지 장주 쌤다 돈이 또 배셔라 연중그 쌤 계획에 연중을 넣 계획에 아니 교류 교와쇼 튕겨도 교와쇼 개견도 대 튕겨도 교와쇼 소드는 거 같지.
And so that's of course this is not actually happening for us. So this is happening at the level of the imagination here. It's not so easy as that, but we can rest assured that a very powerful imprint has been laid down, very rich imprint has been laid down, and it's very important for us not to allow this to degenerate, and that so that we can quickly go through the paths to attain that state of enlightenment, and to use every moment of our existence, whether we're happy or sad, irrelevant, but to use it to lay down the causes that are going to lead to renunciation, the mind of enlightenment, and the correct view of emptiness to attain enlightenment as quickly as possible. You are Avalokiteshvara, great treasure of compassion, nodding the true existence, and Manjushri, master of flawless wisdom, as well as Vajrapani, destroyer of hordes of demons without exception, 17Apr, crown jewel of the sages of the land of snows, Rosa and Drakpa at your feet and make request.
Everyone, thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Jana.
you. Thank you. Thank you.